This week in Beyond the Headlines, domestic violence numbers on the rise.
According to the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force, domestic violence from 2009 to March 31st, 2012. 2009, we had a total of 69 cases. 2010, we had a total of 84 cases. 2011, we had a total of 87 cases. And up to March 31st, 2012, we had a total of 41 cases. So as we could see, there's a increase yearly in domestic violence.
The number of recorded cases of domestic violence has risen by 18 between 2009 and 2011, and already for the first 5 months of 2012, a total of 41 cases has been documented. Laura Lee Connor, coordinator for the Department of Gender Affairs, which has the responsibility of educating the public on domestic violence as well as reporting on and responding to such cases, gave JTV News the figures, which shows the steady increase in domestic abuse cases, with common assault remaining the highest form of domestic violence for that period.
According to the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force, domestic violence from 2009 to March 31st, 2012. 2009, we had a total of 69 cases. 2010, we had a total of 84 cases. 2011, we had a total of 87 cases. And up to March 31st, 2012, we had a total of 41 cases. So as we could see, there's a increase yearly in domestic violence. So it's something we definitely need to work on stopping it in its tracks.
Also confirming a rise in the number of reported cases being made to them was the Family Support Network, a non-profit, non-governmental organization that, as the name suggests, offers support and advice to victims of domestic violence. Human Services Administrator at the Family Support Network, Karina George, said that for the past year, the organization has seen an increase in the number of women reporting abuse.
Since 2010, I will say, has been increased gradually, and we have seen also that they will be more committed into staying away from the relationship. Of course, they will go back sometimes, and when they come back, we will, of course, help them because we understand why they sometimes stay.
Giving her own explanation of why the increase in numbers, Laura Lee Connor said the change in the roles of men and women is largely the cause, as many men aren't able to adjust to women leaving home and going into the workplace. She said that education on what constitutes healthy relationships is needed to help in this regard.
We have change in roles physically. Women go out to work, men go out to work. But I don't think mentally we're there where it's understood that both parties have to make adjustments in their lifestyles because of the changes around us, the economic changes, where both parties have to work. So if we get a better understanding, if there's more publicity or education or sensitization on healthy relationship, what constitutes healthy relationships, and being able to identify when your relationship is going into decline, then that'll be a way of handling the situation. But I really think it's because of the role changes. There's just total chaos where people don't understand how to deal with their anger and their feelings, so they lash out at the person they believe to be the cause, but in actuality, they're responsible for their actions. So if you decide to take your hand and hit someone, that's on you. It's not on the individual that you've struck.
However, despite efforts to combat domestic violence, many victims continue to remain in abusive situations, while some go as far as dropping charges against their abusers. Speaking about some of the reasons why this occurs was Sergeant Kendall Bob of the Family and Juvenile Department.
They may not want that partner to be taken away from them because for economic reasons, financial reasons, and so forth, love, being embarrassed, and so forth. Yes, you have the right to say to the court that you do not want the matter to go further. But my take on that is that you are in a cycle where you're being abused, and every time the police has to arrest your partner, you're saying that you don't want him to be charged, you don't want him to be arrested. Now, the Family and Juvenile Unit are trained officers who deal with matters of domestic violence. But there are other officers who are not so much trained. And because of that, there are times when you can be ignored because they become frustrated and, saying, why are you coming before me all the time? And you always saying that you don't want the police to charge and arrest your spouse. So what is left for me to do? So some officers may see it as a waste of time, So yes, you can drop the case, but, at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to suffer as the victim from that partner.
Currently, both the Department of Gender Affairs and the Family Support Network share a similar challenge in their prevention and awareness campaign, which is a lack of finances to do as much as they would like to. Lauralee Connor said the Department of Gender Affairs receives a budget of $2,000 for its May to December year, but other avenues are also being explored to bring the message forward.
The budget right now for our campaign is like $2,000, but like I said, this is for the whole from May to December. We do have persons working with us like the Bar Association. Miss Dion Borland-Ferron is on our committee, and she was trying to find ways and means in which we can publicize the act itself. And there is a talk show that the Bar Association has, which we've been invited on, but we're currently working on the Act Simplified, frequently asked questions and answers to the Act. So once we've accomplished that, then we will feel much better going, to the public, breaking down the document, letting them know that these are the changes made and this is now what is coming into effect.
The Family Support Network understandably faces its own challenges financially as a non-profit organization, who, according to Karina George, has its own day-to-day bills to handle just as any other business would.
We get a grant from the government, which we are grateful. Of course, that's just a portion of what we actually need. We get a grant of $40,000, and our expense surpassed the $100,000. Because we, as a nonprofit organization, we still have the same expenses as a regular organization. So we still have to find creative ways to get the other funding that we need to actually cover our costs.
But financial constraints aren't the only hindrance to the domestic violence awareness and prevention campaign. Lauralee Connor said that there is a gap between the various services responsible for domestic violence, which includes the Social Development Department and the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force. She said that in addition to this, some of the responders are not aware of their roles.
Well, I think some of the challenges which we're trying to address now is the gap between the different services. The gap in knowing who's responsible for what, how do you deal with the cases, that's what we're trying to decipher and make straight with the protocol. There's clear-cut guidelines on how to deal with the issue of domestic violence and how to specifically deal with the victims, especially if there's a situation where you have to collect data. You would really need the police in as soon as possible, because that evidence, if tampered with, then can't be used. So we want that joint effort where everyone is called in to deal with the victims at the same time, so that it wouldn't be repetitive for the victim to repeat the same story over and over again. So we're really trying, that gap had everyone at a standstill, but that gap is being closed in now, where the services are more joined or combined. And with that being done, then it becomes easier to know who has which information, who's playing which role, and it's easier for us to deal with our clients.
With such issues working against steps to remove domestic violence from the community, it becomes essential to strengthen the legal framework governing how domestic violence is treated. In an effort to do so, government recently introduced the 2011 Domestic Violence Act, which incorporates a wider range of actions that can be defined as domestic violence, helping in many regards to increase the safety of victims in each case.
The act came into existence or was signed off by the House of Assembly by the governor October 3rd, 2011. The Act defines domestic violence. It says it means any controlling or abusive behavior that harms or may harm the health, safety, or well-being of a person or any child, and includes but is not limited to the following: physical abuse or threats of physical abuse, sexual abuse or threats of sexual abuse, emotional, verbal, or psychological abuse, economic abuse, intimidation, harassment, stalking, damage to or destruction of property, entry into the applicant's residence without consent where the parties do not share the same residence. These are some of the major changes. It also gives definition for economic abuse as well as electronic mail, which includes any form of electronic communication through internet and other social media. So if you go on the internet and you're slandering or abusing someone with words, then that's also considered domestic violence. Emergency monetary relief is also included in this act, where if a person has to move out of the home, whether it be male or female, because we're aware that both parties can be abused, we will have to come up with some sort of relief for the person financially if that person has to move out.
Having stated that there are many persons who are not aware of the steps to take in the event of domestic abuse, Laura Lee Connor spoke about who should be contacted in each case, and she also gave a list of contacts for victims of domestic violence.
If it's a situation where there's bloodshed or injury, you should really try to get to the hospital as soon as possible. Once you get to the hospital, they in turn, like I explained earlier, would contact their social workers, who would then contact social development and the police. And it would be a joint effort. If you need to be removed from a situation, then Family Support Network is called in as well, because they provide short-term shelter for victims. But if it's a situation where you're bleeding or you're injured, the hospital. If not, if it's just a situation where you've been harassed or you're being intimidated, then you should get to the police. Or you can call the social development department, who the police in turn would also call to make sure that they're informed, because we want a collaborated effort in dealing with these cases, not just one single agency, but to strengthen the way in which victims are dealt with. We're working more towards a collaborated effort, a joint effort with all the major agencies.
FSN Administrator Karina George said that it usually takes a victim of domestic violence several attempts at getting out of the abusive relationship before they actually do get out fully. She said that it is important for these victims to utilize the agencies that are at their disposal, such as the Family Support Network, the Department of Gender Affairs, and the Family and Juvenile Department of the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force, so they could get the help they need, not only to get out of their situation, but to get the help they need to recover from it as well. This is Walter Barrett, Beyond the Headlines.